Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to cross the Øresund once again, and we're going to go back to Copenhagen in Denmark and revisit a brewery that's featured on the channel a couple of times before. So I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last year or two, and I would say that these days this brewery is best known for their different kinds of IPAs, although they have been very prolific throughout their history and they do a whole variety of different styles, many of which I still need to try. But the beer that we're having a look at today is a style that I know they do very well, and I've heard very good things about this particular beer. So looking forward to trying this one. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Gørløse in the northwest of Copenhagen, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Ølsnedkeren. So this particular beer is called Stjernedans, literally the star dance, if my Danish is up to standard. Hopefully it's kind of hopefully this word is actually one of the ones that's very similar to Swedish. But yeah, this beer comes in at 6% ABV, and it's another New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, this is one that I bought from Beer Hive Amar in the south of Copenhagen, which is a lovely little shop owned by Jessica, and this was one of her recommendations. But yeah, she's pointed me in the direction of some really nice beers over the last little while, so do make sure you check out the link to her Facebook page and Instagram in the video description below and give her some custom. But yeah, she's got a great selection of Danish stuff there as well as things from further afield. But of course, when I go over to Copenhagen, it really is the Danish beer that I'm mainly interested in, unless there's something very random. But certainly nice to return to Ølsnedkeren once again after I think about 6 months or something like that. So yeah, hopefully this is another good beer. But yeah, the Stjernedans, 6% New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA. But let's crack on and see how we go. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Ølsnedkeren before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Danish beers that I've reviewed for you, and that's being added to very regularly, of course, because I live in the south of Sweden. I go to Denmark quite often and I love my Danish beers. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then, to tell you a little bit about Ølsnedkeren once again then. So, Ølsnedkeren was originally founded as a bar in Nørrebro on Griffenfeldsvade in Copenhagen back in 2012. But Ølsnedkeren literally translates into English as the beer carpenter. So this is, yeah, basically the beer carpenter brewery. But the two men behind this company are Simon Toft Hansen and Tobias Rosenving Riek. But the bar was originally started by Simon, and he began brewing beer as a little bit of a side project in the basement, and this was some of the stuff that he served from the taps, along with other breweries' beer from the Copenhagen area and further afield. But the following year, in 2013, Tobias, who also has the beer brand Bryggeren, literally in English the brewer, began brewing his beers at Ølsnedkeren, and he just gradually became more and more active in the company. So the year after that, in 2014, Stronzo Brewery went bankrupt, and so he teamed up with Simon at this point, and they took over Stronzo's old premises, and this was a former dairy up in Gørløse. This is the premises that would go on to be home to quite a few different breweries. It was known as Ølkollektivet, and for a long time it was home to Ølsnedkeren, Gamma Brewing and Dry and Bitter. But when they moved into the Ølkollektivet brewery, they started to release their beers in bottles, and then a little bit later on in cans. But over the following years, they've continued to expand the brewery capacity and just produce lots of different beers. And as of March 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, according to Untappd, Ølsnedkeren have produced around 550 different kinds of beer, while there have also been 20 different beers released under the Bryggeren name. And I do have one of the Bryggeren beers actually in my fridge at home in Scotland, a big imperial stout, so I need to make sure I review that when I go home in a couple of weeks' time. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about Ølsnedkeren for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. But yeah, having said they've produced about 550, I'm not sure how many of them have actually been released in cans and things like that. There will have been quite a few keg-only beers that were released back in the days when this was basically a very small brew pub actually. But yeah, that is everything about Ølsnedkeren, so check out all those links as I mentioned earlier. But yeah, let's crack on and see how we get on with this beer itself. So as you can see, you've got this lovely kind of almost like infrared type pattern on the artwork of this one, and I picked this one up as well. One of the other things is when I see a bunch of different beers from the same brewery, I tend to pick the one that's either got the most interesting or scientific name or the nicest artwork. But yeah, the Stjernedans is quite strikes a bit of a chord with me because of my background in chemistry and astrophysics and stuff like that. But yeah, this one should hopefully be very, very nice. But as we said earlier, this one is a 6% New England Hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA. It's hopped with Amarillo, Galaxy and Mosaic. We know all of these hops quite well. Amarillo and Mosaic are both, of course, American, whereas Galaxy is Australian. Amarillo comes in about 12% alpha acid, and that gives you a lovely big oily, quite zesty orangey character. Galaxy gives you a nice big pungent passion fruit, but also some kind of mango and pineapple qualities. And then Mosaic gives you a kind of lighter tangerine note as well, actually. But yeah, it should hopefully be quite an interesting one, this. On the back of the can, I'm not sure how well you're going to see this, but there is the Ølsnedkeren symbol, the sort of hop flower thing there. Plain silver top on the can, of course. And yeah, I don't think there's anything else really to show you on this one, to be honest with you. But let's crack it open and see how we go. The Stardance New England IPA, 6% ABV from Ølsnedkeren, the beer carpenter in Gørløse in Copenhagen. Let's get it out and into the glass. I believe this one had been canned within a few days of when I picked it up at Beer Hive, and I think I've only had this one in the fridge maybe about 10 days or something, so this beer should be in pretty damn good condition actually. So yeah, I quite like this. But yeah, it's poured very nicely, I have to say. Let me just line this up again so that it looks nice for the video, because you know, OCD and all that kind of thing. But yeah, anyway, here we go. So as you can see, and as you would expect from a New England IPA, it's poured absolutely beautifully. So before the head disappears, I think it's safe to say that this one is poured with about a 2/3 finger of a kind of frothy but still slightly bumpy perfect white head. That looks very nice. I think the bubbles in that one are definitely kind of medium rather than anything else. The colour of this beer is, of course, a very bright sort of mango juice yellow. I always like comparing New England IPAs to different fruit juices because that's just what the appearance reminds me of. There are one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass at the bottom, but other than that, there's not really very much carbonation visible. But it's got a lovely, yeah, it's got a lovely, very bright kind of, it's got a lovely, very bright kind of yellow mango juice kind of colour to it, this one. Absolutely lovely. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on, one, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put in will affect the colour of your beer as well. But other than that, I think it's I think this one is really just dependent on the fact that there's a lot of oat and wheat in this one. Yeah, this one does contain, this one actually, I think by the looks of it, it just contains wheat malt. This one, it says spelt malt, so that's an old type of German malt. I think it's actually one of the oldest types of wheat that's still in existence actually. So yeah, this one is most likely to be a wheat leaning New England IPA, and that might explain the very bright yellow colour of this one. This is one of the brightest New England IPAs I've come across in terms of colour in quite a little while. But you can see the head has faded away to just be a very kind of thin foamy layer over the top with a nice ring around the edge. But yeah, I don't think there's anything else we need to say about the appearance of this one other than to comment that the haze on this, it's certainly not one of the soupiest and gloopiest that you're going to come across. It is just kind of nice and medium, to be honest with you. But remember, the level of haze depends on the oak content, the wheat content, and I guess to a degree the yeast as well when it comes to these New England IPAs. But yeah, that concludes everything we need to say about the appearance of this one. Let's have a look at the aroma and just see how we get on with this beer. So, oh yeah, that does smell very, very nice. So yeah, first impression of the aroma. It's definitely a very kind of light, bready New England IPA, this one. The green component is leaning towards the grassy side of things. It comes across as quite fresh, and you've got some lovely, just very soft, fruity characters to this beer as well. So yeah, I can certainly appreciate how this beer goes about its business. It gets a big thumbs up from me in that regard. Yeah, this will be, I think this is one that you will find quite pleasant when you take your first whip of it. But let's break down that aroma and explain it a little bit more kind of in depth. So, yeah, on the malty side of things then, the backbone of this one is quite straightforward. You get a little bit of a soft kind of bread crusty character in there, a little bit of a good kind of fluffy white bread, and then you can certainly smell a little bit of that spelt malt in there. So for me, spelt malt has that little bit of a kind of wheaty, bitey kind of character to it, but it's also got, yeah, it's got a little bit of that wheaty, bitey sort of thing. You can smell that wee bit of zip kind of in the back of your nose. But at the same time, it's quite a smooth, spelt malt always has a little bit of that smoothness to it as well. So yeah, bit of bread crust, a slightly thicker and more dense white bread, a wee bit of a kind of zippy, wheaty character as well. But yeah, you can certainly smell the spelt just kind of thickening out that bready note in the beer. For me, this one, it does have a wee bit of a kind of sweeter quality to it as well. You get a little bit of that sort of Werther's Original, kind of butter candy, butterscotchy note out of the malt base too. But otherwise, it's actually a very straight shooting malt base, this one. There's maybe a little bit of golden promise in there, because you do, the more that I smell of it, I start to get a little bit of the kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity kind of vibe out of this beer. So yeah, definitely some interesting things going on with this one actually. So keep that in mind. Yeah, definitely keep that in mind with these beers as you go further forward with them. But yeah, this strikes me as a very kind of soft and barley malt leaning beer. The spelt malt is quite different from other wheat. Normally wheat would be quite wheaty and it'd be quite bitey actually in terms of aroma, but spelt malt is always a little bit different. German, old school wheat malt actually. But yeah, as I've explained in other videos, for me there are 6 different elements to think about when it comes to New England IPAs. There's the sort of yeasty and farmhousey character. There is the kind of more rye leaning, sort of rye like grainy character, and these two of course are a bit more prominent in American brewed New England IPAs, particularly the more old school ones, whereas you've also got wheaty bitiness, oaty creaminess, barley malt breadiness, and a little, pardon me, quite often some sweetness and things too. And those 4 elements are more common in the European brewed IP, in New England IPAs. Our New England IPAs are a lot more akin to the sort of treehouse wheaty ones and the treehouse oaty ones and the Trillium kind of wheaty ones actually. That's really where ours kind of lean. But yeah, this one is quite interesting on the malt base. I find it quite light and just bready in a lot of ways. Maybe 1 or 2 kind of crackery elements coming out of this as well. But yeah, in terms of the kind of hoppiness that comes out of this beer, the green component, for me there's a little touch of earthiness in there, and I think that's most likely to come from the mosaic in this. There's quite a bright floral character to it as well, but I think the green component really leans towards grassiness, to be honest with you. It's got a nice kind of soft and not really zesty but slightly wet grassy character coming out of it. And again, this kind of highlights what New England IPAs are all about. As I've explained many a time, New England IPAs rely on late addition hopping within the last half hour of the wort boil and dry hopping, and at those stages you're going to get much more kind of flavour and aroma from the hops rather than it being about giving bitterness. It's early addition hops that give you the bitterness, of course, and though the early addition hopping is used mainly in West Coast IPAs to give you that bit more of a kind of bitter kick out of the beer. But on the green component, this one is pretty nice. Let's look at the fruity side of things. So fruity wise, it's kind of what you'd expect. There's a little bit of fruity wise. It's got a nice little bit of passion fruit to it. I do actually get quite a lot of juicy mango out of the beer as well, and there's some sort of apricot and pineapple notes there as well. That's the Galaxy that's giving you that. The Galaxy is responsible pretty much for all of the kind of tropical side of this beer, so I like that. Passion fruit, mango, apricot, little bit of pineapple, that's all in there, and I think it really leans towards that softer side of things. I get a lot of mango, a lot of apricot, and a lot of pineapple. It's the Galaxy in this beer is being showed off very, very nicely. But then on top of that, you've got quite a bit of orangey character as well. I get the soft mosaic. I get the soft mosaic, and I also get the more kind of oily orange, zesty vibe out of this one from the Amarillo as well. I've always found that Amarillo has that big oily, zesty character, whereas Mosaic's just a little bit softer and kind of brighter in its notes. It gives you that wee more tangerine kind of thing. But the way that this all goes together, I think, is really, really nice. So it gets a big thumbs up from me, actually. This one, the aroma, this is quite nice, but it's a very soft, bready, light New England IPA. But good balance between the orangey, citrusy side of things and the tropical fruit as well. But as I always say, take a bit of time to ponder over the aroma of the beer before you get stuck in. I think this is one that you will that you will enjoy the aroma of. But yeah, let's get stuck into this one then. So this is the Stjernedans, Stardance, as you would say in English, from Ølsnedkeren, the beer carpenters in Gørløse in Copenhagen. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, cheers. Oh yeah, that's pretty nice. I'm going to say straight away, in terms of what I've had from that New England IPAs generally, more recently, this one it really has a bit of lightness to it and a real bit of zip. So yeah, and that's the spelt malt. That is all to do with the spelt malt in this one. I realised as well I forgot to put the last little bit of the beer in before we tasted it first off. But yeah, the other thing you're going to get with this, and spelt malt always gives you this little bit of a kind of grainy, almost like a kind of grainy residue in the flavour, and you will notice that quite quickly with this beer as well. You get that nice kind of wheaty bite out of the beer, but at the same time you have this sort of crackery, great kind of grainy wholemeal bready residue coming out of it as well. So yeah, the way that this beer goes about its business is certainly quite interesting. Yeah, it's a thumbs up from me. This, I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink this again. It's actually quite a nice light, kind of quite nice light and crisp New England IPA, this one. But in a lot of ways it reminds me a little bit of some of the old, it's got a little bit of the bite and things you would have from the old white IPAs, but not the same kind of wit beer vibe that they had. This certainly is quite different to the other ones we've had in recent times, but this is what you want after 3,200 beer reviews. You want beers that are going to make you think a little bit, and you want beers that are going to make you think a little bit and think about what exactly is going on. But yeah, let's try and break this one down for you then and describe what's happening in the beer. So we'll focus on that middle third of the palate first off, as we always do. So malty side of things first. So yeah, middle third of the palate, you can feel that backbone of the beer. There's certainly a wee bit of that kind of dry bread crusty sort of thing going on there. Absolutely, like a fresh kind of hedgehog type roll. Then on top of that, you'll get on top of that, you can feel there's a little bit of like a Jacob's cream crackery type vibe to the beer, and then you get this kind of wholemealy brown bread. But then on top of that, you'll get the slightly more white bready side of the thing as well. So the spelt malt's giving you this kind of grainy brown bready base, but on top of that, it has a bit more of a kind of white bready character to it as well. So I do like how that goes together. Yeah. Spelt malt's a really interesting one because of that crackery kind of wholemeal brown bready sort of vibe that it gives you. So bear that in mind. Yeah. This one, yeah, this really is. It really is quite an interesting beer from that malty side of things. This one, in terms of the New England IPA spectrum, it really leans toward. It almost, if I was tasting it blind, I would wonder if it's a bit more farmhousey. I wonder if I was tasting this blind, if it would, if I would pick up that this is spelt malt. Because as soon as I saw on the can there that it says spelt malt, of course I get all this. I know what spelt malt is like because I've had it many a time before. But I wonder if I did this blind, would I actually pick that up? But yeah, this the further you go into the aftertaste with this, it gives you that almost kind of, it's like a rye, grainy kind of thing. It really feels like wholemeal brown bread. So yeah, goes together nicely. Oh. So, yeah. I think other than that, I don't think there's too much to say because this beer, it doesn't really develop so much of a sweetness. So yeah, bread crust, Jacob's cream cracker sort of thing, the brown bready grainy base of the spelt, then the thicker white bready thing on top of that, and then you start on top of that, you get there's a wee teeny touch of something that could be a little bit of golden promise or whatever. Like there's like a teeny little dry circle. There's a sort of circle in the middle third of your palate there. It's quite dry, but there is a wee bit of that Werther's Original sort of thing. But as you move further out from that, it gives you a little bit of the. It does give you a little bit of a more kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity kind of vibe. So yeah, I really like how that. I do like how that. I do like how that kind of middle third of the palate goes together actually, but this really is a kind of bready, grainy, leaning New England IPA in a lot of ways. I don't think there's anything else we need to say about the middle third of the palate. Let's go on to the back third of the palate then. So, the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of a bready build up there, a wee bit of that kind of brown bready sort of thing. Then the base of the back third of the palate, there's a wee bit more kind of, there is a wee bit of a more, it does just give you that little bit more of a kind of bitter grainy sort of thing. But as I've explained before, more bitter and dry kind of flavours come out on the back of the palate, and as you go further forward, it gets a little bit more, it really does get a little bit more kind of, the palate just generally gets sweeter. So yeah, you've got that base, you've got a little bit of that kind of base of bread crust in there, absolutely. Then on top of that, there's a wee bit more of a kind of brown bready sort of thing. And that feels a little bit thicker. So yeah, you've got that bread crusty base, a wee bit of the cracker as well, a slightly thicker sort of brown bready layer. You do get a bit of that kind of authentic wheaty bitiness there sitting on top of that, and then you can feel the yeasty notes just sitting on top of the yeasty notes just kind of sitting on top of that. So yeah, the yeasty note in this one, I actually find it's like quite a sweet white bread almost. So the yeasty character there, you can feel that more dense, doughy, bready, yeasty kind of thing sitting on top of that. And then yeah, you have a wee bit of the kind of yeah, you've got a bit of a sweeter, doughy white bread in there, then just a little bit of a kind of regular bread crust behind that. So yeah, the yeasty side of this beer is quite interesting too. This one's quite sweet on the yeasty side of things. And that's a little bit of a contrast to the overall grainy vibe that you're getting from the spelt in this one. But on the back third of the palate, the flavour is certainly a little bit taller, so you can feel that. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of the palate, the flavour just kind of squashes together that that little bit more. So yeah, I quite like how that goes about its business. But yeah, that's enough about the malty and yeasty side of the beer. Let's focus on the hoppy side of things. So yeah, green component in this one's quite interesting. So in the back corners of the palate, there's a wee bit of that typical earthiness that you always get from Mosaic. But as you move further forward, as you move further forward towards the front corners of the palate, you get quite a nice, bright, floral aromatic quality out of this beer. And again, I really enjoy that actually. The floral aromaticity in this one's a lot brighter than the aroma would have you believe. So that does work out quite nicely for sure. But round the front curve of the palate, you get a little bit of a grassy character, and the grassiness in this beer is quite zesty. And I think that's most likely to come from the Amarillo, but I wouldn't discount Galaxy from contributing to that as well. Galaxy can give you quite a zesty, grassy note too. But let's focus on the front third of the palate and the fruity side of the beer. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of that kind of brown bready build up there. Then the base of that front third of your palate is like a soft, white bready kind of thing. So yeah, that goes together quite nicely. But then sitting on top of that, you get that nice, slightly more oily bubble where the juicy, fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. And at the back of that front third of your palate, you can feel quite a few more pungent tropical notes coming out of this beer, and that's the Galaxy, of course, as well. So at the back of that front third of your palate, then you get the pungent passion fruit of the Galaxy, but as you move further forward, that does spread forward a little bit, but it mellows out gradually. There's some nice kind of mango-y notes to it, and you've also got a little bit of kind of apricot and pineapple there as well. But as soon as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, it's all about the orange. So for me, I think the Amarillo is quite prominent in this one. You can feel that big zesty quality from the Amarillo there. I'd be very curious to know whether this is like a 33 blend of these three hops, or whether it's like 50 Galaxy and then 25 of the other two. But yeah, I feel that the Amarillo is really quite prominent in this. That big zesty orangey character is lingering there, but at the same time, you do get a little bit of that lighter kind of tangerine from the Mosaic as well. But I mean, overall, this is quite an interesting New England IPA, and it has a slightly different vibe to it compared to a number of the other ones that I've had, but that's mainly because of the malty side of things. But yeah, it's interesting this, but I think the fruity character that really lingers there is that passion fruity quality. But let's leave it at that for the flavour. I think we've said everything we really need to say about this one. So we'll round off with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel then. Yeah. So in terms of the mouthfeel, as I said at the start of the tasting, this one's pretty light actually. So for me, this is kind of a little bit below the very midpoint of mid-bodied. The carbonation is very smooth. It has a little bit of a clean mouthfeel to it as well, but at the same time, you get a little bit of creaminess out of this one. Although, as I've said, the whole vibe of the beer is about being a little bit more kind of grainy and dry. So yeah, not sure what else we can really say about it in that regard. But yeah, the kind of the malty side of this one is really leaning towards that grainy, slightly dry side of things, but it works. It absolutely works. In terms of IBUs and the hoppy bitterness of this one's quite zesty in a lot of ways, but I think the IBUs might just be about maybe 30 at a maximum 40 IBUs. The malt base is in this one really, as I've said, is quite grainy. There's not really a great degree of sweetness to it either, but the fruity side of the beer has a wee bit of tropical kind of pungency to it, as well as a slightly more oily, zesty character as well. So yeah, this is quite a zesty kind of zippy beer. If I tasted this blind, I would maybe wonder if it was a session IPA rather than a sort of 6%er. It really has that kind of 4.5% vibe about it, where they put a bit more wheat in and give it a wee bit more bite and zip and things. That would be a very kind of that would be quite a suitable that would be quite a suitable description for this beer. It's a 6% New England IPA that drinks a little bit like a lighter session IPA, but I like it, and the spelt malt's quite interesting. That sort of grainy, crackery vibe that it gives you, slightly rye like as well. In fairness, is quite interesting. So thumbs up to Ølsnedkeren for doing something a little bit different actually. But I think we can leave it at that for this review. So yeah, this one is the Stjernedans, Stardance in English, a 6% New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA with spelt malt in it from Ølsnedkeren, the beer carpenters in Gørløse, Copenhagen. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Ølsnedkeren as well. And we will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the near future. Check out my social media, check out their social media, and do check out the Beer Hive in Amar. Once again, thank you to Jessica for recommending this beer. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and see you in the next one.